So let me take you back first to start 20 years ago. I was a 5K, 10K runner. I'd run a couple of absolutely disastrous marathons, hated running long, didn't think I had any aptitude for it or didn't enjoy it. And then two very small and random events took place in my life in 1992, which set me on the path to this crazy stuff. So let me tell you what those two random events were. I was living in the east coast of the United States at the time, and one morning picked up our local paper and saw a little article in the sports pages about a group of 28 guys who were 90% of the way across the United States. They were running from California to Central Park in New York. And on that particular day, they were due to run through the town we were living in at the time. And I was kind of interested, but I was going to work that day, and I didn't do anything about it, but it just kind of stored something in my brain. So these guys, these 28 guys, tried to run across a whole continent. How mad is that? But then crazy event number two, about 6 months later, I got a copy of Runner's World, and in Runner's World, there was an ad for a book. And do it that way. An ad for this book. And this book was a book that described the Trans America Footrace, this race that I'd read this little blurb in the local paper about. And remember, in 1992, there wasn't Amazon. It was very difficult to order a book. You had to fill in a form and write out a check and take it to the post office, all that stuff. But for some reason, I ordered this book. Don't know why. Book arrived, and I started to read this book. And something happened as I read this book. I was just amazed by what I was reading. Think of a superlative adjective, and it found me in this book. I was amazed on two levels. The first level was, how do you possibly arrange a race that takes 10 weeks? How do you get the logistics together? How do you get a group of 28 runners and about 20 volunteers across an entire continent? How do you deal with accommodation, food, water, accidents, police, weather, traffic? I mean, there are so many things that can and do go wrong over 10 weeks. I mean, we've all run in races and there's little glitches in the race, but over 10 weeks, the whole thing can come to a standstill. So that was the first level that really blew me away. How do you arrange these things? But then the second level was the 28 guys who, and they were all guys actually in this particular race, not anymore, but back in the day they were all guys. But how did these 28 guys have both the mental and the physical wherewithal to run across a continent? How could they run an average of 45 miles a day, no rest days, for 9 or 10 weeks? How is that humanly possible? And it's really a very, very good book. It talks about the dynamics. There were some very strange dynamics in this race between the sponsors and the guy who actually won the race, and a lot of the other kind of journeyman competitors. But so it makes it kind of an interesting soap opera read as well. But as I say, I read this book and it just blew me away. And at the time, I thought I could never do anything like this. But from time to time, every 2 or 3 years, I'd find this book again. I'd read bits of it. Every time, it just set something in motion. So fast forward from 1992 to 2003, and by 2003, I'd run a bit more. I'd run the Boston Marathon a couple of times. I had run a couple of longer races, including the South Downs Way here. But I hadn't really found what I loved to do. But then, in 2003, I found a race called the Tahoe Triple. So this is Lake Tahoe in the United States between California and Nevada. It is, as you can see, a fantastic place. And there is a 3-day stage race that goes around the circumference, the perimeter of Lake Tahoe, a marathon each day for 3 days. And I thought, well, this transcontinental stuff, forget that, but maybe I can run 3 marathons in 3 days. And so my wife and I went to Lake Tahoe and I ran this marathon. She gave me a lot of advice, all of it good, And the advice was to start slowly and start conservatively. And I'm a bloke, so you know, blokes tend to go crazy and then die. Women run much more sensibly, but I took her advice, and after one day I was in 10th place. I ran slowly. The second day I was in 8th place, and I finished the race with some to spare in 6th place. And so I thought, oh, this is interesting. I can't run one marathon very fast, but I can endure these stages much better, and I can improve by running smart and figuring out how it works. So this was how I got from just a normal runner to a stage runner. I ran across France next, didn't take her advice and had a miserable time, and then across Germany, and finally I ended up in 2009 at the start line. I qualified to run in the Trans Europe Footrace. So we started at the town of Bari in the south of Italy, and 68 runners, about 20 women in fact, 68 runners from all over the world, Japanese, German, French, me, I'm half American and half English, so whatever I count as. But 68 very, very good runners met in Bari. For the first half of the race, we ran up the Adriatic coast of Italy, through the Po Valley, across the Austrian Alps, which in 218 BC is where Hannibal had his elephant misadventure, so you can imagine it's quite, well, like today, really. So through Austria, Bavaria, the Black Forest, the Harz Mountains, the plains of Germany, to Kiel, which is a port city. My first objective for the race was to get through Italy, and at least I could check off I'd run across another country. If I got to Kiel, I knew there was a ferry from Kiel back to Harwich, and so I could abandon at that point. So we got to Kiel, we took an overnight ferry, and so I wasn't quite out of the running at this point, so we took an overnight ferry from Kiel to Gothenburg. For some reason I kept going, and we ran the length of Sweden. We spent 19 days running on the E45. Now the E45 is the longest road in Europe, and to run 45 miles a day on the same road for 19 days messes with your head big time. It's really quite depressing. But we ran the length of Sweden. We crossed the Arctic Circle. And as its name implies, it's bloody cold up there. We crossed the Arctic Circle, we touched a little bit of Finland, and then spent the last week in Norway up to the North Cape of Norway, which is the northernmost point in Europe. And I'll come back to Norway at the end to give you some horror stories and some good stories from Norway. So this was the race that we did in 2009. Of the 68 starters, 45 finished. Thankfully, I was one of them. So what are these races like? Well, the best analogy I can come up with is this movie. Now, for those of you who haven't seen it, Bill Murray is a reporter, and he relives the same very difficult day again and again. So Groundhog Day is what it is. Every day you wake up at 4 a.m. You have breakfast at 5 a.m. You're constantly eating, by the way. You're ravenously hungry all the time because your body depletes very quickly. I'm 170 pounds. I don't know what that is in old money, but I'm 170 pounds. I ended up in this race at 150 pounds because your supplies of fat and then your supplies of muscle get used by your body to fuel yourself. Anyhow, 5 a.m. breakfast. You pack up and wash and do all those kind of things. You usually stay in sports halls or school gyms. It's pretty unsanitary, it's pretty basic and rudimentary, but if you were staying in the Hilton, you would never want to get out of bed. So getting off your air mattress and sleeping bag and getting going seems like a good idea, I guess. So 6 o'clock running starts, anywhere between 40 and 60 miles a day, 8 stations every 10 kilometers with food, and again, you're constantly taking food. You finish the day at whichever place you find yourself. Hot showers are the thing that really, or lack thereof, are the things that really get people excited. And 10 kilometers from the finish, people are saying, "Oh, they're hot showers, oh, they're hot showers." It makes a big difference. So you shower, you nap for a while, you eat dinner, and then go back to sleep. And that's all you do: run, eat, and sleep. And it's amazing, but it is also very wearing on the soul. It becomes a very, it's like going to work, but quite a hard job. And you do it 64 times. No rest days, no break. If you had a rest day, you probably wouldn't be able to go back to it the following week. So let's have a little bit of fun. People know about the Tour de France as a stage race. They don't know much about running stage races, but let's just have a little fun with comparing the Tour to my experience here. So first of all, if you look at the Tour, I mean, really, you know, it's just that little. And they cheat with bikes and drugs. But, so 3 weeks, and they have rest days too, by the way, which we don't. So let's have a look at a few shots of the Tour. So you've seen these pictures of guys riding up the mountains and drunken spectators and kids and all this kind of stuff. Well, Trans Europe looks a little bit different. The crowd is one deep in places, and you know, people look at you as if you're strange. I think this was actually in Norway. So cycling along, sunflowers, pretty views. Well, actually, we had a few pretty views. Not that many, but this was one of them. So the call of nature. You don't usually see that on TV, but Trans Europe. Sorry, man. Crashes. So they have some pretty dramatic injuries. Well, this is me nearly being hit by a truck in Germany, so you know that's as close as we really come to those problems. A lot of very serious injuries at times in the Tour. Everyone who runs these races, when you run 300 miles plus a week for a number of weeks, everyone gets injured and everyone gets sick. Most people, almost everyone, gets either Achilles tendonitis or shin ACS problems, either the front of the leg or the back of the leg, depending on biomechanics. And also everyone gets sick. Your resistance is compromised because you're so tired and fatigued, and you're living in this very unsanitary situation with 68, well, 100 other people at the beginning of our race. And so any illness, just colds and coughs and bronchial problems, transfer very, very quickly. And they can be quite dangerous too, because again, with things like blisters and open wounds, you can contract some pretty nasty things in school locker rooms and shit. The tour has a problem, as we all know, with doping. This was our race medic. He's looking at beakers of urine. He wasn't doing it to look for drugs. He was doing it to look for blood, because when your kidneys start to fail after a period of time of running too much, that's how it shows up. So he was very concerned that if he saw any trace of blood, that people were either pulled from the race or you know, dealt with appropriately. So that was his daily function there. The finish of the Tour, Arc de Triomphe, Champs-Élysées, wonderful finish at the end in Paris. This was our finish line. I thought the two cones were a nice touch with the paint in between. Behind the fence is the Barents Sea, which is the piece of sea which separates that from the Arctic, the polar ice cap. So we didn't actually have to go further than this, but that was good. So that was our finish line. You know what happens, you know, these girl cyclists in yellow dresses show up at the finish. This was me finishing the race. I get hugged by a sweaty Frenchman. So the winner of the Tour 7 times, we we're about to live again in Austin, Texas. Lance Armstrong, one of our neighbours, has won 7 times. The guy on the right here, I'm running with, is a guy that probably none of you except James Adams in the back, and a guy called Rainer Koch from Germany I'm running with. He is a phenomenal multi-day runner. He has never lost a race. He runs at 3 hour 30 marathon pace, which probably doesn't sound incredible. But you try doing that twice a day, back to back, and then doing it 63 more times, it puts it in perspective. That is a very amazing thing to do. He is about to run the Joggle John Groats to Land's End race in April. If you can find a bookmaker who will take your money, bet everything you have, your retirement funds and pensions, on Rainer winning, because he's the nicest young man. He's 30 years old now. He's the nicest guy you'll ever meet. Totally, just a wonderful guy. This is a picture of my feet. I'm sorry about that, but I have to share. I have to share at this point. You'll notice my shoes. When you run many days, as I do, you tend to get blister problems and you tend to get nail damage. And I found that by cutting the toe boxes off your shoes is a tremendous relief to that problem. It stops the blisters continually re-blistering and reinfecting. And you don't need those toe boxes if you're running on roads. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it on the South Downs Way, but it's pretty good on roads. This gentleman here was the paramedic. His name's Jan Straub. We refer to him as Mr. Blister. And you'll see a line of people waiting to see him. That's my foot, and he's digging things into it. But he really made the difference for probably 50% of the competitors to keep them in the race by ministering to our blisters, by draining them, sanitizing them, bandaging them, and so on. Tremendous difference. Without him, many of us, including probably me, would have not made it. So let me just tell you, people like good news and bad news, so let me tell you about the best day and the worst day of Trans Europe. And this is where let's go back up to Norway. You can shut your eyes if you like and visualize, but this happened to be the best day. And this was day 61. So we had 64 days, so we were only 3 days from the finish. And we were running from a town called Marsa in Norway to Alta. Alta is the northernmost city in Norway. And the day was very, very much like today. The weather was sunny skies. So we were 400 miles north of the Arctic Circle at this point, but a beautiful, beautiful day. So we started at Marsa and we were running to Alta, which is on the coast. So we had a 45 miles of gentle downhill running. Off on the left-hand side, there were snow-capped mountains, a beautiful bubbling stream that went down to the sea, and the herds of reindeer started running alongside us for 10, 20 miles of this race. So it was a magical day. And as we got towards Alta, Alta has what's called an alpine microclimate. So in the summer, Alta, unlike, it's so far north, but it has the same climate as the Alps. It has the smell of grass in the air. It has cows with bells in the fields. And we got to Alta, and we finished at a school, a brand new school. As we crossed the finish line, we were welcomed by a wonderful headmaster and his staff. The showers were fantastic. And we were served a fantastic meal by the teachers. And life was great, because we were now 61 out of 64 days, so we only had 3 days left. We found this paradise in the north of Norway, and we were there, right? No problem. So we all went to bed. Remember, it's so far north, it's light all night, but so we went to bed in the daylight. We had lots of room in this big new school. And woke up the next morning. Again, the teachers were there for 5 o'clock in the morning serving us a wonderful breakfast. Went outside, another lovely day. And we all started to run and thought this will just be another, same as yesterday, and we're one day closer. And so we started to run out of town, out of Alta. And the first 10 kilometers were uphill, because we were going from the sea to a thing called the Sennalandet. Now the Sennalandet is a 40-mile chunk of tundra. I'd never been to tundra before, but if anyone ever invites you to go to tundra, decline. There isn't much in tundra except cold and bad things. So we ran up the slope to the centre landet, and the weather was still nice, but as we crested the hill onto the centre landet, Mother Nature decided she'd had enough of nice weather and she was going to turn it 180 degrees. And this was the result. The day was just horrendous. We had 30, 40 mile an hour headwinds full of hail and snow. You can see I was still wearing shorts, I wasn't wearing long stuff, I didn't have my ski hat or my ski gloves on, and we suffered terribly for 40 miles, to the point where I thought I was going to get hypothermic. Now the garbage bags, funny story, garbage bags, as you drive along the roads in Norway, every 200 or 300 yards in the north, you see poles, wooden poles about 8 feet high, and attached to them are garbage bags. And at first I thought this was Scandinavians being hygienic and, you know, not littering. But what they're for is to scare off the reindeer. They flap crazily in these winds and scare the reindeer away from the road so they don't have horrible car accidents, because reindeer are probably the dumbest creatures you've ever run into. So I was getting so cold and hypothermic, my only recourse, and I confess, I had to steal these garbage bags from these poles. And I was, you know, your mind starts to wander, but you worry about these reindeers and cars running into each other because you've stolen these garbage bags. But I knew if I didn't do this, I wouldn't make it. So 40 miles of this tundra. And at about 7 p.m., so I was still running at 7 p.m., started to come off the centre landed and down into the town we were spending that next night. And the nature abated, Mother Nature was a little forgiving at that point. And my phone rang, and it was my wife, just wanted to chat and ask about my welcome home party. And it was a wonderful, wonderful moment, because at that moment I realised I was actually going to make it. I'd conquered the centre landed, I had a couple of days still to go, but if that was the worst it could do, and I was actually going to make it. So it was a wonderful moment. I don't know if she realised how wonderful it was, but from that point everything was plain sailing. So just a couple of final thoughts, and then if you have any questions. This gentleman here, parenthetically, is a guy called Helmut Secker. And Helmut Secker was one of the 28 people who completed this race. And the reason I put his photo up, he went on to become, for our race, a person with two very important functions. He was in charge of food, and he was in charge of beer. And so Helmut became our best friend, but wonderful, again, a wonderful gentleman. But it was nice for me because it kind of closed the loop on this crazy book that got it all started. Just two quotes from this book which I like, and if you feel that this is something that you would ever contemplate, these are great. I'd warn anyone contemplating such a race that they're embarking on a voyage that they will not come back from. Their life will never, ever be exactly the same. And that's, I think, very personal. And this is one I think that ties well to the endurance life thing. It's amazing that people can actually get through something like this. It shows what's possible when you focus the mind. I guess you have to believe in the unbelievable and then be willing to give it a try. So that's all I would suggest. Life is not a rehearsal. This is for real. If you have a crazy idea, don't give up on it. Do great things. That's my prepared remarks. I too wrote the book, which I can let you have for the discounted price of £5 tonight. I would warn you that if you do it, you may end up as nutty as me and do all these things. But anyhow, see me maybe when the food, shameless plug, but see me when the food is being served, and I can sign a copy and let you have one if you're interested. Okay.